to you live from the San Francisco Bay Area. It's time for Zig in the Zone with Ralph Zig Tyko.
I am the man, Zig in the Zone, and you are comfortably zoned with me, the Zigzag Man. How about that for an introduction? Pauly, thank you for it all, getting us there.
Oh, no problem. It's good to see you, Ziggy. I see you got your I got my virtual hit ski. You got a real hit ski.
I got a real hit ski. I have to have that. It's doctor's orders.
It's doctor's orders. Gotcha. So how are you doing today, buddy? I see that you got some sun over there.
We do. It's going to be 70-something, 76 today. And I'm enjoying Alameda, I have to admit. We have a guest today who is returning, and one of my favorite people in the world. Eric Gray, how are you?
I'm fine, Ralph. Thanks for asking me to come back. It's always fun doing this with you.
I always ask you because I always enjoy your company. And you have one thing in common with me that very few people don't have. You are both a Giant fan and a Met apologist. Both at the same time.
That would be true, yes.
I am that way. In 1961, when they were formed, it was 3 or 4 years without a New York team in the National League. And I was growing up and missing the Giants. And their first year in 62 was incredibly frustrating for me because I'm not a loser. I hate to lose. I wasn't accustomed to it. New York, most of the teams won, excepting the Giants most of the time. But they won in 54, and the Mets were horrible in 62. And the San Francisco Giants were just an inch away. Willie McCovey to Bobby Richardson, an inch away from being in the World Series. So it was tough for me. I never stopped rooting for the Mets. I figured the Giants left me, and I'm going to show the Mets some loyalty. It hasn't been easy being a Met fan, has it, all these years? Eric, am I correct?
Well, yeah, of course. They've been close a number of times. As you know, they've only won the World Series twice. They don't have a history of being good for long stretches of time. But they're our team, right?
They're our team, and they had some ownership, the Wilpons, that totally frustrated all of us for a long time. And I'm glad I'm glad Cohen bought the team. I have mixed emotions about some of the moves that he's made for this year, but I don't think Soto was the place to put all your bucks. I think they could have divided it between scouting and free agency and all that, and they might have been better served. But he did something in the spring. I saw a reel. He made a very nice defensive catch, and I didn't know he was capable of that. So, how do the Mets look this year to you, Eric?
I mean, it's really kind of hard to tell because their lineup obviously is potent. I agree with you, by the way. If Soto's going to play someplace, I'm certainly happy he's playing with the Mets or the Giants. We're talking about the Mets now. I think that everybody disagrees with the incredible salaries that are being given these days. I mean, I guess I don't want to be a hypocrite. I mean, if the Dodgers had signed him, I would be screaming. I don't mind that. I certainly don't mind that he's with the Mets. But I agree for the amount of money that they spent. I mean, I think their pitching is incredibly suspect, and it would have been really good for them to get a frontline starter or two. You know, Manea was really good last year. I think he'll, you know, he's not going to be out for long. Montes is, I mean, they're talking about him as a number 2 or 3. I don't think he's got the, you know, the history to prove that. You know, I like Peterson. McGill has never been quite that consistent. And, you know, Holmes, who is opening, I guess on Friday. I mean, he's like the Giants' Jordan Hicks. They've taken a career relief pitcher and they expect him to become a full-time starter. And Hicks was great last year until he wasn't. And we will find out about Holmes. So I think
not to be negative about their pitching, but I'm really worried about Diaz. His velocity has been down, and I don't know if that's improved in the last week or so. But you know, relief pitching is everything these days, and he's a concern of mine. But other things concern me, and one of the things that had me invite you this week, Eric, is that we share a very close mutual friend in Jerry Feidelberg, and he's from what he says, he's terminally ill, and it obviously doesn't sound very good. This is like all of our losses, they build up, and the depression builds up. This has been a very tough year for a number of reasons. The nice part about this podcast is simply having this podcast. It's cathartic. It gives me a chance to blow off steam, and I can't tell you how important that it is at this stage of my life to be able to stay what's the word?
Stay
Relevant.
actively and engaged.
Yes.
Living with intent, right?
Living with intent and taking my mind off the way the world is going. I know Eric has the same ideology as I do, so I don't have to ask about his frustration. It couldn't be anything worse than having this two-headed monster, Elon and Trump, in office. And I'll say one more thing politically. I'm somewhat confident in that this will pass without any permanent damage because of the judges, the federal judges recently, and even the Supreme Court has been putting a kibosh on his craziness, it seems. Eric, do you feel the same?
Some of it.
I don't know. It's really hard to look too much to the future. I had this conversation with my best friend this morning. It's really a little hard to look to the future when there's so much going on now. And look, I don't know how political we want to get, but I just, the thing that keeps coming into my mind is take any one of the things that have happened recently and think about if a Democrat had done it, what would the Republicans be saying? They would be completely up in arms. And, you know, the efforts to kind of limit democracy to close all.
Oh,
Look, I was a
that-
federal employee, and I don't think that there's a single person who would say that examining programs and departments to make sure they're efficient isn't a good thing. But when you eliminate departments without really doing that assessment, well, that's just wrong.
But what's really sad and frustrating is that he said in his number 25 speech, his plans and what have you, he said all the things that he's enacting now. How about a woman, any woman, who, and a man too, who voted for Roe v. Wade and voted for a man who condones Roe v. Wade? This sets us back as a society for 50 years.
Well,
They're going to be.
I don't discuss that issue, and the reason I don't, I mean, I've got my feelings about it, but I don't want to mess with people's. Abortion rights is a really, really core value for a lot of people, and for some people, it's a religious thing, and I don't mess with that. What I care more about are all the other things associated with women's care and shutting down clinics to help with, abortion prevention and just women's care just in general. There's a lot, and there's a lot.
It's nuts, and in terms of abortion, what I hear from my right-wing friends, who I still communicate with the idea of abortion, they say make it a state thing, and what they're doing. But the problem with that is the states who even don't make it a crime make it very difficult for a woman to go to a different state to get her needs met. And there's no education going on. With NARAL is pretty much at an end. Something near and dear to my heart, because I was a fundraiser avocationally for liberal causes in my life. And NARAL was one of the things that I solicited money for, to prevent the idea of losing Roe v. Wade. And when that happened, I thought that this is the beginning of the end, right there. And religion. You mentioned religion is into it. Some people, they should not let religion control their lives. That's another story.
It's another story.
Let's get off.
Yeah, I'm just going to say I am not a states' rights person. I don't personally think that gay marriage should be allowed in one state but not allowed in another. I don't believe that I'm really more of a centralist. And in my working career, when I saw Department of Labor, start sending out responsibility for program regulations and stuff and allowing every state to have a different set of criteria, that I
doesn't work
like that.
No,
I'm not a states' rights person, but that's me.
Well, the only states' right that I've come up with that's positive in the last 2 years is Oregon, compared to California, has what they call a right to die with dignity law. And I came very close. My good buddy, as Pauly knows, and I think you know too, my good buddy Marty Rose, who was my second grade, in my second grade class, my first real friend. And 2 years ago, he came down with ALS, which is very unusual for someone in their 70s. The veterans say that the chances are it was Agent Orange. He was in Vietnam. And the thought of him not having the right, lives in Florida, to put things in his own hands. Not that I mixed in or I want to mix in on what he's doing, but my own thing, I just want to not go through what others are going through, if possible, and I want to have the option. I came very close to moving up to Central Oregon. The coast up there is beautiful. You have to live there a year before you can have the right to qualify to live your life with dignity. But it's what I would choose. And you were talking about state right, and I wish it were that way in every state, but it's not. And I don't know. Things are so screwed up on so many levels that sometimes it's absolutely depressing. And
although you did come up with a really great new nickname for Trump.
A fucktard?
No, Agent Orange. Because he's deadly.
He's deadly. That he and the real Agent Orange are misjudged in the harm that they can do. And the sad part, Marty joined the Air Force much because I joined the Air Force to keep out of Vietnam. And not only did I keep out of Vietnam, but Marty went to Vietnam and got Agent Orange. No recruiter ever told either of us about Agent Orange. We didn't, the country hid it. They knew it was going on. And it's one of the things that they obviously let down their veterans and their service people. He joined like I say, joined the Air Force because I did, and I got to stay in the United States. I was stationed in California. He went to Vietnam for a year, and we communicated much like a podcast on cassettes. And although he wasn't in combat, he was periodically, they had to take shelter because they were bombed. You know, it was terrorizing for him. And now all these years later, this comes up. Between Jerry and Marty, who Marty's on his last legs as well, and I've had, and David Hirsch, another good friend from Sacramento, and basically responsible for moving me to the Bay Area. We're both New Yorkers in Sacramento, and Sacramento doesn't fit. He passed away in the last month. So Jerry Fidelberg, Marty, and David, three of the most important people in my life in their times. And just, losing all three of them. It's depressing. gotta tell you, there are things that keep me going. That I have a grandson, not my son, but my foster son, and he doesn't like to be called foster anymore. He doesn't want me to think of his kid as my foster grandchild. He wants him to be my real grandfather. And when I think of it, it's no different than having my own grandson. I love him. I love the kid. I love his dad as well, just like I love my son. So that's brought some joy into my life. As Pauly knows, and I think you know too, Eric, I last year split the sheets with a woman who I thought I was going to spend the rest of my life with. Now, one way or the other, not having that come to fruition is also depressing. It could be for the best. I like to think it's for the best, but having to live with all these things in the last year could have been much more harmful to me than it was. I was starting to lose my health. I was losing weight, and after a while, I turned it around. I said, "Hey, you're gonna die from all this. You got to get back into taking care of yourself." I'm talking first person. So, and I've done that, and I'm back in the groove, as it were, as much as I can be. So that's my my speech for today. Just to let you all know what's going on. It ain't easy, and but you know what? It ain't easy for any of us, for different reasons, and you know, it's just the way it is. My grandmother warned me when I was a kid that the hard part about getting old is losing your friends, and it's come to fruition. So, how about saying something, either of you, that can cheer me up a little bit?
Holy smokes. You want me to cheer you up? Go ahead, Eric. I know you got something inspiring.
Opening day is Friday.
Believe me, that is and has been always something that turned around my year. And you're absolutely right.
Opening a day is when every team is tied for first.
Absolutely, that's you stand as much chance of having your own fate in your hands as any other team. That's nice. I still got to know about the Giants. You're a Giant fan too. Tell me what's going on with them, Eric.
Well, I mean, I think they're going to be a mediocre team. I mean, there are way too many ifs. The left side of the infield should be great. Chapman had a better year last year than I kind of had realized. By the end of the year, he did put up some pretty impressive numbers. If Adames plays the way he can and has, that will be terrific. Second base, Fitzgerald, I mean, he's not a superstar, but he handled shortstop fairly well and probably be better at second. If he can keep hitting, that's great. First base, who doesn't like Lamont Wade and Wilmer Flores? But, let's be honest. I mean, Wade, at least for a while last year, if not the whole year, led the league in on-base percentage. He seemed to have lost all of his power from the previous year. I mean, they're a nice tandem. They're not going to change the world. The catcher, Pat Bailey, good catcher. Each of the last 2 years when he's had the starting job, he tails off offensively at the end of the year. The outfield is kind of the same. I mean, who doesn't like Yastrzemski, right? And he's a nice.
I'm very disappointed in Yastrzemski and how his career has gone.
You know, I mean, like a lot of players, he had a good couple of years that kind of, you know, propelled him into the public eye, and he's a nice compliment. But, you know, that's what Heliot Ramos in left field. I mean, we know what he did last year. He came up in April or May, and he made the All-Star team. It was unbelievable as a rookie. He tailed off too? Will he be good all year? Will Lee in center field be able to do what they hoped that they would do? Too many question marks in their starting rotation, filled with question marks. You've got Logan Webb, who should never be a question mark in anybody's mind anymore. Verlander, who knows, right? I mean, I'm not big on short-term, huge contracts for players that are 140 years old. I think that what they gave Verlander makes perfect sense. I think the possibility that he can come in and really pitch well for them for $15 million, I think it was worth a shot. Robbie Ray, former Cy Young Award winner, he's been injured the last year or two. I think he had Tommy John. I'm not sure about that. Will he be returned to his form? Maybe. Jordan Hicks, mentioned before, career relief pitcher. He pitched half a year last year quite well, and then he had to go back to the bullpen because he ran out of steam. And the fifth spot in the rotation has been taken by Birdsong now. I mean, he beat out Harris and Landon Roop. I suspect all those guys will get starts this year. But it's you know, I mean, it's not like you're going with a rotation that's got 5 or even 4 absolute givens. So do I think it's going to be a mediocre team again? I do.
Right. You're a realist. You don't. You're a pragmatist. You don't mess with dreams that can't come true. How about that? Does that describe you pretty much?
Yeah, yes. You know, the other thing about the Giants too, and I think to some degree the National League has been slow in adapting to what a designator hitter should be, right? In all the years when there was only a DH in the American League, I always thought that the National League was really at a disadvantage because the American League teams always had that DH with thump because they could afford it. That's the way they built their team. The National League couldn't afford that David Ortiz, who could be a DH, but only in half the games, right? Only when, or not half the games, but only when the Giants were playing at American League Park. They weren't staffed that way. They couldn't afford to have a guy who only played sometimes. And when you look at who's going to be, you know, the designated hitter for the Giants this year, you know, it's going to be Wilmer, it's going to be Wade, it's going to be, you know, people that don't strike fear into the other team's hearts.
Eric, which rules that are new are you in favor of and happy with? And what is the one thing, if you could name it, the one rule change that really sticks in your craw?
Oh, that I can easily do. It's the runner on second to start the 10th inning. I will never, ever, ever be able to accept that. As far as the other rules, philosophically, I don't really like any of them. Practically speaking, they don't bother me as much. The pitch clock, you know, I don't like it, but on the other hand, as a fan watching a game, it doesn't appear to me, and I'm no expert in this, I'm not the one who's on the field, it doesn't appear to me that I see the game being materially sped up. Now, I've heard there's some theory that might be what's contributing to pitcher injuries because they don't have enough recovery time between pitches. You know, we know that when a pitcher goes into the dugout after an inning, and his team goes 1, 2, 3, and they're back on the field, there's not enough recovery time. As someone who's not a pitcher, it's hard for me to really understand that. I get it conceptually. Is it the same, but between pitches? I don't know. But that doesn't bother me. I don't particularly like the eliminating the shift. I mean, I want to be clear about this. I hate the shift. I hate it. But it's a strategy, and it's a manager's prerogative. And, you don't like the shift, learn to hit the other way. He says again, as someone who, even as a softball player, could barely learn how to hit the other way. I didn't particularly care for making a relief pitcher throw to 3 batters. Again, I hated when Bruce Bochy and pretty much every manager these days would take out their pitcher, batter after batter after batter. It was incredibly annoying when you're at the game to see this. It dragged on. On the other hand, again, it's a manager's strategy. It's his prerogative. And if he wastes his bullpen by the 9th inning and they go into extra innings and he has nobody to put out there, well, he's got to take the consequence. So none of these do I like in theory, but most of them I don't mind in practice.
Yeah. You know what I don't like? I don't like the fact that one could, as a pitcher, can throw over a limited amount of time to keep the runner on first. And I think that bastardizes it all, because it does. It bastardizes the rule book. How many stolen bases are there going to be this year?
Yeah,
or last year?
I mean, right. A runner certainly knows that if he's drawn 2 throws, the pitcher doesn't have to run, and he's going to be going. Now, I didn't really notice whether stolen bases increased a lot in the last year or two. But going back to the thing about the shift, the thing that surprised me is you would think that with the shift, batting averages would go up, right? Because, you now have that short left or short right field that's removed. You would think it wouldn't necessarily affect the power, but you would think that batting averages would go up. At some point towards the end of the season last year, I looked, and I don't remember the final stats, but there were like 9 players in the major leagues who were batting over 300. And that, honestly, that really surprised me. I thought batting averages would go up.
Well, for the same reason, the shift, wouldn't you think batting averages would go down if you're being played when the defense has more of an advantage?
Well, I mean, when you move the short, the second baseman from short right into second base, it's going to cut down, the number of ground ball singles, I suppose, but it also opens up the field for line drives. So I kind of would have thought there'd be more singles and doubles. That's what I would have thought.
Yeah. That changes year to year too. First of all, it's all moot because the shift is no longer.
Right.
So that must have made you happy.
Well, I mean, again, it made me. I like it more from the fans' perspective watching a game, not liking to see the shift. From a theoretical perspective, or I don't think that it should have been taken out of the manager's hands to decide how to position his fielders. But
Mm-hmm. What's the number one thing that you think, and I'm going to ask both of you, that baseball should do to ensure future growth and not kill the goose that laid the golden egg? Eric.
Well, future growth in terms of what? People enjoying the game?
Well, no, in terms of developing fans. Kids having memories that they could take into adulthood so their fandom continues.
And before you answer that, Eric, let me ask: does that mean more butts and seats, or does that just mean we have a collective nomenclature or knowledge that baseball
more young people? Something has to be done to get the young people in there, and maybe it's take away something from the corporate customer by having the All-Star game played during the day, by having the World Series played during the day, so kids could get to see them, both events.
How about this? How about this? Is at least once a year, if not every single game of every season, you take corporate out of it. What do I mean? All those corporate skyboxes should be donated to Boys and Girls Club across the United States. They should be donated to they don't have orphanages, but like homes for kids. Hospitals should be able to go out with their entire ward of, kids that have cancer that can make the trip. And they should go into these luxury boxes, and they should have optimum seating. They should have the players come in and sign autographs like they used to while they're practicing or something. I don't know.
Right.
They need to do more stuff like that. You're right. The corporate dollar has to get the heck out of baseball.
Yeah,
we have to inspire the youth.
I think the points you're both making are great ones. And Paul, I'll get to your point in a minute. I do agree that All-Star games and especially World Series games should be played during the day. It's just crazy that kids on the East Coast can't watch a ball game. I look around when I go to games, and we go to 15, 16, 17 games a year. I look around, I see plenty of young people there. I know that all these rule changes were made to grab the attention of the young people who don't have the patience to sit through a 3-hour game. I don't know. I see a lot of people, younger people at these games. My kids love the game. They just love. They're not. I wish the game had ended already, and their friends do too. I kind of question all that stuff. But Paul, to get to your point, and about the whole corporate sponsorship, part of it also goes to salaries. So, what I would do, Ralph, to answer your question, and I know this will never happen because of the players' union, I would put a hard cap on not only team but player salaries, and to say a team cannot go over X amount, whatever it is. Not, there's a cap now, but they just pay a tax.
Like a fine or something?
Yeah. I would say that a player, and I think the NBA did this for a little while. There were tiers of what you could make as a player. Look, I don't begrudge a ball player who's got a shelf life of, somewhere between 6 and 14 years, making a lot of money. I think everybody would agree that Shohei Ohtani and Soto don't need to be making $60 to $70 million a year. And let's not even forget the deferred money. That's a whole other thing that I just don't want to lose my mind over. I would have a salary cap that is generous to the players, but also nothing that the average person on the street is going to say, I could barely afford to go to a game, and you're paying this guy $60 million. It's the old Latrice Sprewell thing. I need to have, put food on my family's table. And that won't happen because of the players' union. But I will also say that if the salaries came down and the salary cap for a team came down, it's not like I have some wonderful feelings about the owners. I don't want them to benefit from reduced salaries. What I would do, Paul, is this is where what you were referring to is I would make the owners, and I've said this for a long time, I would make the owners have to spend their savings in bringing people to the park that can't afford to go to a game, right. Whether it's people that are in foster homes, whether it's the average person who is barely skating by, barely paying rent and putting food on the table, that they can't go to a game where it's going to cost them at a minimum $200 for 4 people, and that's crappy seats, and maybe you bring your own food. That's what I would do. I think it would go so far towards improving the public's appreciation for the sport.
Now, I'm going to jump in here a little bit because that's the perfect segue. I want you to talk to us about your book, Bases to Bleachers.
I'd like him to read from the book a little bit.
Well, I want him to plug it first because I currently got the image up on the screen. Bases to Bleachers was completed. It's currently out for sale. Tell us about that process and what brought this book out.
Well, thank you. This is totally unexpected, but it's also something that I'm well equipped to deal with. I've got 2 books out, actually, Bases to Bleachers and Backyards to Ballparks. They are both collections of people's stories, their memories, that in one way or another touched baseball. They're very different from your typical baseball book. They're not a biography. They're not about a season or a team's history. They're the stories of people like you and me, just average people, and their recollections of things that involve baseball. There are chapters like Love in Baseball, about falling in love at a game or realizing that you are in love with somebody in a game. And there are stories about meeting the celebrities and getting a picture with them, or about your own experiences, playing, or maybe being on the field for something other than playing, like throwing out the first pitch. In that particular book, there's a chapter on the Negro Leagues. There's a chapter on stories from different countries, sometimes about baseball in that country, or sometimes about somebody from another country watching a baseball game here and getting their reaction to it. There's a chapter on women in baseball, women who have had some kind of official capacity in the game. There are stories about famous games, and there's a story from a friend of mine who likes baseball well enough but isn't a fan, and how she was in a bar waiting for a friend, and she sat talking to this guy, and the long and short of it turned out that this was, she didn't know it, but when they introduced themselves, he said, nice to meet you, Sarah, my name is Ernie Banks. And she had no clue who this was. And when she went to talk to her friend who finally came to the bar, she said, oh my God, that's Ernie Banks. Do you know who that is? And she said, yeah, he's the guy over there at the bar. And her friend got all flustered and said, you got to get his autograph. He's the greatest Cub of all time. So Sarah walked back and introduced herself and said, wow, you're Mr. Cub. You must have been one great basketball player. The second book, Backyards to Ballparks, it's got stories about your first game, or catching the ball or not catching the ball. It's got stories about, which is never going to be in the book, it's got stories about watching the game on TV or listening on the radio. It was never going to be a chapter about that until I got a couple of stories from people. And these are some examples of the chapters that are in the book.
Hey Eric, who took you to your first game?
Okay, so this is really a sore point for me because there are so many things I don't remember, and it aggravates me. I mean, I'm sure it was my dad. There's no other possibility. It really bothers me that I do not remember my first game. I do not remember watching Mickey Mantle play in those days when I was growing up. The Yankees were the only team in town. And, as I always say, when you had Mickey Mantle running around center field and hitting home runs, what more could you possibly want? But I don't remember seeing him play, although I know I did. I don't remember seeing Tom Seaver pitch, although I know I did. But one of my stories in the book, and I've only got 4 stories in each. There are 275 stories in the first book and 325 in the second. I've got 4 stories in each. But one of my stories in the second book is I was at the game when they retired Mickey Mantle's number. And again, I don't remember who took me. Had to be my dad. I was only 16. There's no way I would have gone to the Bronx from Long Island on my own. And I remember so little about that game, but I certainly remember where I sat, which is in the upper deck on the third base side and watching Mickey Mantle ride in the golf cart around the stadium. That I will never forget.
Is that the one where DiMaggio presented him with a plaque?
Well, I don't remember who did. Again, my memories of the specifics are dim.
Oh, okay.
I do remember asking in my story before I looked it up on the internet. I said I wondered, which Yankee greats were going to show up, and as it turned out, it was all of them. I mean, it probably was DiMaggio. I do remember Mantle making his, citing the Lou Gehrig speech about being the luckiest man on the face of the earth. So while my specific memories about the day are minimal, I will always remember that day.
Right. And you're always going to be thankful for your dad for bringing baseball into your life.
A friend of mine just wrote a book about, it's called, his name is Rob Scheinkoff, and he wrote a book called Mom Wanna Have a Catch. And it was similar to, my book. I mean, he started writing it before I started mine, but it was similar in that it was people's experiences about baseball with their parents. And my dad didn't love baseball. I mean, he took my brother and I because he knew we loved it. Getting him to go to a doubleheader was like torture for him, although we always wanted to go to Banner Day doubleheader at Shea. And my story in the book is about my dad, what he did for us because he loved his kids, and how he always went to see his grandkids when he was out here visiting. He always went to see his grandkids in their baseball games or basketball games or whatever. Not because he had the patience for it, but because he loved his grandkids. So yes, and I'll tell you this: my dad used to send my daughter. Some of you out there know that my daughter runs a press elevator at the park, and our favorite player was Matt Cain, and I'll read that story. But Rachel also loved Jeff Kent, and my dad used to send her newspaper articles about Jeff Kent. Not because he cared, but because he knew that she did. And I was lucky to have a dad like that.
Wow. Literally brings a tear to my eye.
As it does.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Who took you to your games, Pauly?
They were all over the place. It started off with my mom in the early 70s to A's games. I remember going to A's games in the early 70s. I don't remember if we got tickets from relatives. My grandfather owned a business, so I think he was one of those ones that would get tickets and give us tickets, or get tickets for us from different corporate people in that time. And when I say corporate, my parents were in the plumbing business. It wasn't like big pharma or anything like nowadays, but it was a plumbing company, and it was a larger plumbing company. But I remember him getting perks from different people. Here's a group of tickets, take your grandchildren or whatever. And so I don't ever remember him going to a game with us, but I want to say that he supplied tickets in the early 70s for A's games, because I remember being in A's bleachers. I remember wearing A's stuff, having the little baby A's baseball bat, as a souvenir, which, when you look back on things, they gave us little bats as souvenirs while we were in a game. Nowadays you worry about people getting into fights and brawls and stuff, and it's like, oh, I'm glad we didn't give them bats. So I remember things like that. It was my mom. My mom was the single parent. My mom would take us boys. At that time, it was 2 boys in the house, and she would do all the things that single parents do. If you have boys and you're a mother and you're a single mom, you took them to baseball games. You took them to races. You took them to do that stuff. Just like when I was a single dad early on with my daughter, I would put her on my lap, which reminds me of that. I would put her on my lap. She was the only kid that out of my 4 children, my daughter was the only one that really wanted to sit and watch baseball with me. I could sit on the couch in front of the big screen. In those days, I had a 63-inch projection TV, and we could watch Giants games, and she would sit there. I could do her nails, do her hair, and we would watch a Giants game, and all the boys would be running around like, wild Indians. And so I think it's a tradition that definitely should be passed on. I think it's a wholesome tradition. Hell, it's the American pastime, and I still think that's true. Even though if you asked a child today, what is America's favorite pastime, they would probably say TikTok. And and I'm serious because I see it all the time where they do, I think Jimmy Kimmel does it. They go out on the streets of LA right in front of the Jimmy Kimmel show, and they pretend like they're a reporter, and they go like, oh, do you know who the president is today?
Yeah.
Or did you just hear that,
oh, we know.
Canada's the 51st state. Did you hear that? Right. And half the people will go, oh, yeah, I know. Because they just want to be on TV.
Yeah, Paul, I totally agree with you. I've been doing a lot of interviews lately on radios, and the question that they always ask me is, what is it about baseball that makes it different? And, I mean, I really think that you couldn't write books like I did about other sports.
Right.
Maybe soccer internationally. But there's something about baseball. It's the family. It's passing it down. It's the love and sharing. And I think part of it may be simply the pace of the game enables you to engage with the people you're with. I mean, that's how my book started. I mean, I won't go into the whole thing about that, but we were at a game one day and I just asked them this question, what's your favorite moment of the game? And I think there's just something romantic about the game and the setting and the pace. I'm not saying that families, I talk basketball with my son. I'm not a football fan, but as I always say, a lot of people remember how many home runs Mickey Mantle hit, how many people know how many touchdown passes Johnny Unitas threw.
Well, they called it America's pastime.
Right.
For a reason, because that's what people would do to pass the time.
Right.
Guys families could sit around and have this conversation. And it wasn't like, let's say, golf, where you had to shh, someone's golfing. It wasn't so fast-paced like hockey that if you looked over at your friend and said, hey, cheers, and you had your beer and you turned back around, what happened? They just scored what happened?
Right.
And so, it's the pacing, it's the camaraderie, it's the family. There's so many little things, and it's all wrapped up. And there's so many things wrapped up with baseball. I can't have a hot dog without thinking I should be in a ballpark.
Yeah, you're right. And as my wife always says, what my books have done is it gives people a chance to, so the stories make them laugh and they make them tear up, and they make them remember experiences that you have had, and it reminds people why they love the game.
You're right. And it transcends them. It literally transcends them. They could hear a story of yours, and through osmosis, they can almost smell the cookies in the oven baking.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I know certainly, it's an overused word, but, my journey with these books has been remarkable. The friendships I've been able to make, you two guys are an example. If it wasn't for my doing these books, I wouldn't know you guys. And, and we've passed microphone time on many occasions. Can I, do you mind if I just kind of, do my own shout out since you've already done it and how people can get the book?
Please do. And I'm going to put that image back up on the screen so you can do it.
Great. Thank you. The first book is Bases to Bleachers. The second book is Backyards to Ballparks. I would venture to say that some of the people who are listening to this podcast have stories in the book. In fact, Ralph and Pauly, I'd love you guys to send me a story because I will probably do a third book. The books are available online from Amazon and Barnes and Nobles and wherever you want to get them. But I also have copies to send out if people want signed copies. I mean, the cost is the same. Obviously, there'd be a shipping charge unless you live in the Bay Area and you manage to, to meet. But I love to be able to sign copies of the books, and I'm not just going to sign my name. You'll get a nice note. And who is this guy? He's some schmuck who wrote a baseball book. But I've got so many books from people who nobody had ever heard of, but they're my friends, and I want them to sign it. So if people are interested, you can contact me. My website is Bases to Bleachers. Check out my YouTube channel, which is Bases to Bleachers. My website is basestobleachers.com. And you can contact me at Eric, E-R-I-C, .baseballstories, plural. So it's eric.baseballstories@gmail.com. Send me your story. Tell me you want to get a copy of the book. And if you live in the Bay Area, we do a lot of book talks. And, Pauly, I've been talking about getting you to one of them, and I hope that happens. But, if anybody has a group of friends or, a civic group or their church or synagogue or, Rotary Club or whatever that you would like me to do a talk there, let me know.
There you go. And again, it's Bases to Bleachers, a collection of personal baseball stories from the stands and beyond. Eric C. Gray, where all fine publications can be had. So that's awesome. Yeah, and I do have to make it out. I really do have to make it out, Eric. I've been wanting to. It's just that the chain that ties me to this desk really doesn't go far. So I will get there.
We're gonna do them in a couple at the end of April. So I will give you plenty of notice.
Awesome. We love that. Check out both of Eric's books. We got to get you back in studio. We would love to have you come in and do like a reading and maybe some sort of little publicity, like 15-minute little video for you to plug.
Absolutely would do that. Another thing I did recently, and this will probably interest some of you, is I went to a baseball conference in Phoenix last 2 weeks ago, and I did a presentation about the intersection of baseball and music. Music is even more important to me than baseball. And as I was doing research for this, I was absolutely shocked at how much music there is about baseball. That was just my research. And then when I was doing the presentation, I was talking to people afterwards. Oh my God, it's almost limitless how much there is. And Lynn did all the audio visual stuff for it, and we're going to be refining it. And I don't know exactly what we're going to do with it. Maybe it's just for our own personal fun, but it's going to be one hell of a presentation.
Beautiful. Hey, Pauly, how we doing for time?
We're getting really close. I was going to ask what's your favorite baseball song. Mine has to probably be Center Field by Fogerty.
Well, okay, so I can answer this a little bit better and a little bit less obvious. I'm not demeaning that. It's a
no, and that's probably, because most people, and I'm going to go back to your camera because we're checking out how much Zig needs a shave. All right, there we go. No, that is, and I guess the other one would be Take Me Out to the Ball Game or something like that, because every time you hear it, it takes you back. It transcends you. But
so
what's your answer, Eric?
Let me comment on those.
Go for it.
First of all, if you haven't seen, there's a video of John Fogerty doing center field with his kids at Dodger Stadium. It actually is it's moving in its way that he's doing it with his kids. That's important to me.
Right.
Before he did center field, there was a song called Right Field by Peter, Paul, and Mary. And
hey, listen, I got a trump card. Excuse the pun. It wasn't a pun. Excuse the expression, the trump. But I got a trump card on the music. Frank singing "There Used to Be a Ballpark Here."
I did not talk about that song in the presentation, but I'm developing a discography, and that's certainly one of them. I think maybe there's a song by a guy named Tom Russell called "The Kid from Spavinaw." It's about Mickey Mantle. That was great. There's a song from a woman singer, Carolyn Spence. I've tried to get a hold of her. It's called "Softball," but it's really about how women want to play hardball. and it's an incredibly moving video in which she has, like, I think maybe 12 women pop up at various times on the screen, and they're lip syncing the song, and they're all women players. But I mean, maybe the most moving one I heard was from the rapper Macklemore, and he did a song about when the Mariners got into the playoffs. It was a very special moment, and a friend of mine gave me an incredible story for my book about watching that play. But this song by Macklemore is called My Oh My, and every time I watch that, I get incredible chills. It is a doozy. It's a doozy.
Yeah. And there's also another one that comes to mind is Van Lingo Mungo. I don't know if you remember that.
But my friend is continually trying to get me to love that song. I can't get into it. But do you remember Danny Kaye's song Dodgers?
Oh, yeah. Hiller goes to Miller, Miller goes to Haller, right?
Exactly.
Is that the one?
Exactly.
Well, how about this? For an interesting tidbit, a player was mentioned in Van Lingo Mungo, Bob Estabella. I interviewed his grandson, who was a catcher with the Giants for a while.
Nice.
And he gave me the most interesting interview in terms of talking about the realism of when, in his era, he said, 80% of us, it was the Bonds era. He was a good friend of Bonds. 80% of us did drugs, did steroids. Now, so Bonds being kept out of the Hall of Fame is absolutely ridiculous.
Well, I certainly agree with you about that. I mean, I understand why people feel he should be kept out. And Clemens and A-Rod and all the other ones of that era. I just think if you have a hall that doesn't have Bonds and doesn't have Clemens, who I really despise, by the way, Clemens, and it doesn't have Pete
They
Rose.
should note it on the plaque, the era that they played in, that these statistics are this, that, and the other thing, but they may not be this, that, and the other thing with Bonds, because he was playing against pitchers who were on steroids as well.
I mean, I think to not have these guys and Pete Rose, and look, I think Pete Rose was a real jackass. I do, but to have these guys not in the Hall of Fame, you're leaving out some really critical pieces of baseball history, and put them in the wing of shame. I don't care, but for them to not be in the Hall, my opinion, and you look at very treasured sports writers who will argue one side and others will argue the other. So, as always with things, there isn't a right or wrong about this. It's how you feel about it. I just feel these guys in one way or another should be in the Hall. Hey, Paul, I wanted to tell you something else. You mentioned Take Me Out to the Ball Game.
Yes.
Check it out. There are far more verses of this song than you realize.
Really? We think there's only like 2 or 3. And
I'm sorry?
I said we think there's only 2 or 3, but there's how many? How many is there? A lot?
I don't remember, but it's a much longer song, and there's an interesting history behind it, which I'm not very well versed in being able to tell you, but Google it in your spare time. Google the entire song.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump in a little bit because Ralph's mic is really starting to give out again. It must be that time of the show again. So from MLB.com, the top 10 baseball songs of all time in this order. Number 10, OK Blue Jay.
Which one?
OK Blue Jay.
Okay.
Number 10 is OK Blue Jay. Number 9, Baseball Glove. Number 8, We're Talking Softball. We're not talking softball, folks. We're talking baseball. Number 7, Glory Days by Bruce Springsteen. Number 6 is Joe DiMaggio's Do It Again. The Woody Guthrie song that Billy Bragg.
Yes, right.
Then there was Cheap Seats, a country song by Alabama. The Greatest by Kenny Rogers.
The Greatest.
Number 2, Center Field by John Fogerty. And coming in at number 1 is Take Me Out to the Ball Game. I think the deck was loaded on that one.
You know, what I wanted to tell you is, first of all, I disagree with Glory Days. It always shows up on lists. It's peripherally mentioned. I mean, it's a fairly insignificant reference to baseball, in my opinion. I mean, it's there, but I don't think of it as a baseball song. But you mentioned Talking Softball, and did they say who it's by? Is it Terry Cashman?
What's that?
The song Talking Softball, was that by Terry Cashman?
The one Talking Softball was and I missed one somewhere. I guess number 5 was the Ballad of Ichi Suzuki.
Okay. Yeah.
But what was it? I'm sorry. You said which one? We're talking about softball is it's hard to exclude this wonderful piece from the best Simpsons episode ever, Homer at bat.
Right. It's Terry Cashman. So Terry Cashman is the one,
right,
the guy who did that song in the Talking Baseball, right? Mickey, Willie, and the Duke, Willie, Mickey, and the Duke.
Right.
It's a very famous song, but what people don't know is not only did he do that Talking Softball, but he also did Talking Baseball for every major league team.
Got you. So they appropriated this just for a Simpsons one because Homer was at bat.
Yep.
Got you.
Yep.
So there's a little bit of it.
The Giants featured Vida Blue. He'll be a Hall of Famer, this, that, or the other thing on the Terry Cashman song. But go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. So we were just getting at that time.
Vida was a good friend of mine. I miss him too. We went to the same dentist, and we'd sit in the waiting room and not say anything to each other.
There you go.
We respected that wasn't the time to chat when you're waiting for a dentist appointment.
Right.
But yeah. Hey, you're a terrific guest, Eric. Keep coming back.
Well, thank you. Thank you, both of you. Pauly, thank you for doing that shout out for my books. I really appreciate it. And I would love to come and do a reading of stories from my book.
Absolutely. Definitely just let me know and we'll schedule that out for you.
Great.
And again, thank you for joining us. And Ralph has really brought together a collection of friends.
He has.
And I'm very privileged to be a part of that collective. And I want to thank you guys for including me in. I was usually the kid they always ditched. I was always the kid they go, I think I hear your mother calling. And then they would run the other way. And so I'm glad that you guys aren't ditching me and we get to hang out in the sandlot, the digital sandbox we call Ed Studios.
It's three guys kibitzing. And basically that's the theme of all of our shows. We start out with the topic and we gravitate. We talk about the whatever's comes to mind. You couldn't have said that better with the people that I bring to the show, because I've had a relationship with these people for 7-10 years on my audio podcast, and I picked out the best humans as well as just mavens and what have you. So I picked out the people I want to talk to on a regular basis. It's very selfish.
Well, thank you for including me there, Ralph.
Well, both of you bring a lot of joy to my life. As and you cheered me up today because let's face it, we're losing Jerry, and there's no way to paint a rosy picture on that, but you got to put it all into perspective. He's living a great life, and the life he's living now includes a lot of suffering. So it will be peace at last, and he will be missed and always remembered by his loved ones. You couldn't ask for anything more than that.
No, and I think you said that great, Ralph. I think you said that great. And also just remember, folks, we don't know. You know, we have Jerry in our thoughts, but sometimes we don't get that heads up.
Hey, I hope that all these guys, Marty, Jerry, David Hirsch, come back, outlive me, for Christ's sake. Because people that you love, their passing takes a piece of you anyway. So that's what it isn't. So I've cheered you up for the day.
Oh no, that's fine, and I'll leave you with some kind words from. I'll leave you with some kind words from Keanu Reeves was asked by Stephen Colbert once, "What happens when you die?" And his answer was, "You're gonna leave a lot of people that are gonna miss you. Love and hug and tell the people that are near you today that you love them and you appreciate them, and live your life with intent, folks. Move forward with intent." And so I want to tell you guys thank you. I appreciate both of you, and thank you for having me in your lives.
Okay. Hey, one thing I promise in the name of these people and all people, to keep this thing going, because it will honor them, and that's going to be a big part of the rest of my life.
There you go.
As long as I can.
There you go. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Ziggy.
Thank you, Pauly, for putting this all together, and thank you, Eric. You've become a big part of my life.
Well, thank you, Ralph. Thanks, both of you. I enjoyed it.
You're welcome, guys. We're gonna get out of here. Until next week, remember, stay in the zone. We'll catch you next week, guys.
Absolutely. Don't miss the zone. And go back to our archives and play some of these interviews that we've had. It's really improved since it's become a video, because you can see the people I'm talking to. I can see the people I'm talking to. Makes a big difference. Thank you again, Pauly.
You're welcome. We'll see you guys next week in the zone.